I do just want to make one point about Kentucky, though. For Kentucky to be back, it's a little bit the same thing that I talked about with Shire, right? Like, before I go all in on Shire, like, I just want to see if he can win games as a basketball coach and get his players better. The same thing with Coach Cal here and kind of getting these guys back. My biggest criticism for that program has been they've been a little bit adverse to change when it comes to the stuff that they run and the style that they play. Like, Coach Cal loved playing two big guys, right? Like, he wants to be able to dominate the class, and he wants to be able to have that 5-man in the dunker spot while also having a 5-man set of screens. So you got that guy rolling to the rim, and things kind of get clogged. And, what has been the knock on that program recent years? Like, their inability to shoot, their inability to space the floor, right? If you kind of look at what they run, they're still running a lot of the same sets that they used to run back in like 2010. And look, that happens in a lot of places as well. But what Coach Cal kind of does, right, is basically finds what works and runs it over and over and over again. There's not a lot of like complicated sets that he's running.
No.
Yeah, it's basically like the tweaks are, instead of having Malik Monk or Jamal Murray run off of this double screen and kind of come over and shoot a three, you got Kevin Knox or BJ Boston curling and getting in the lane and trying to get an open like 12-footer, right?
Well, they overwhelm you.
Yes.
He's always tried to overwhelm you. And last year he wasn't able to do it. Yep. Brandon Boston was super, or BJ Boston, whatever he goes by. He was super skinny. Olivier Sarr is more of a finesse big. Yep. Now look how they've gone with their stuff. They've got floor spacing with CJ Frederick. They got a rim attack guy in Severe Wheeler. They go Oscar Tshiebwe, who's back to that big burly guys. And his best Kentucky teams is when they've had a rim protecting 5-man who can overwhelm you with size and strength. Look at Anthony Davis. He did it with like otherworld, like Space Jam level length. Like, Karl Anthony Towns was that kind of guy. But not only with Karl Anthony Towns, they had big guards that overwhelm you. This team, the pieces fit a little bit better with this Kentucky team.
Yeah, and I would say that moving forward, the fact that he went as hard as he did after Chris Livingston is a sign that he's kind of, I want to say, changing towards more modern basketball. So I was talking with someone close to this program, and basically what they told me is that, like, Coach Cal is not a basketball junkie, right? Like, let's take Matt Painter, for example, because I Robbie Hummel has told the story on podcasts that we've done before. Hummel stayed with Painter for like 3 months at one point after he graduated, like when he was kind of in between playing gigs. And he said that, like, when Painter would wake up in the morning, he would watch whatever games he DVR'd the night before. Then he would go to work. He would watch film all day at work, go to practice, come home, cook dinner, and he would throw on whatever NBA game or whatever college game was on that he was watching. And he would stay up sitting on his couch watching that, right? Like, that
sounds
dude,
miserable.
That dude is a basketball junkie. And I think it kind of comes through in terms of what they run. Like, I use this stat all the time. In 2016, they set the record for the most number, or the highest percentage of possessions that ended in post-ups. That's when they had Isaac Haas and AJ Hammonds. 3 years later, he made it to the Elite Eight, setting a record for the most threes ever attempted in a Big Ten season when they had Carson Edwards and Ryan Klein. He will change to what his personnel says he needs to be able to do, and he will change to the times. Coach Cal is not that guy. Like, he's just not staying up all night. Yeah, he's not staying up all night watching basketball games. Like, he's not sitting there grinding film the way that some of these other guys grind film. And he's kind of set in his ways and does what he does. And the other thing, before I let you guys go, I'm sorry, I'm kind of ranting here, but the other thing is that he also wants to call the stuff himself. Like, it's his program. He's John Calipari. His name is on it. He wants to have the stuff that they're running come from him. He wants to call the sets, which is not always ideal when you're not the most up to date in terms of what is effective in modern basketball, right? Whereas if you look at what Matt Painter does, I'll use that example again. Greg Gary ran his offense from 2016 to 2019 when he got the head job at Mercer. Micah Shrewsbury ran his offense the last 2 years when he got the head job at Penn State. Steve Lutz ran his defense for the last couple of years when he got the head job at what he is at. I think he's at Texas A&M Corpus Christi now. So he had guys on his staff that he trusted to be able to run the stuff that he wanted to be able to run. He delegated. They had a ton of success playing all different styles, and those guys went off and got head jobs. So I think that kind of those two contrasts are things that I think we might see changing a little bit just by looking at some of the pieces on this roster. Like, look, Keon Brooks, I love him. If you play him at the 4, that is the ideal position for him to be in terms of a small ball lineup. Same thing with Chris Livingston. So sorry, I'll get off my soapbox now. Someone else talk.
What are you saying about Calipari's coaching tree right now is my question. What are you saying? So you're saying Joel Justice didn't deserve a couple of head jobs?
I think Joel's a really smart coach, and I don't necessarily think that it feels like he was the fall guy, right? Like they kind of
disagreeing with you. I just want to put you on the spot a little bit. I'm not disagreeing with you, but you look at some other coaches that have been with him and have gone on. They haven't had success. Tony Barbie at Auburn struggled. I mean, there's something to be said there. I mean, Coach Cal, he takes supreme ownership, and what that means to him is, well, I better call the offense so that if something happens, I'm the guy that's calling the offense, and it's not on anybody else. And I'm with that to an extent, but Painter does a phenomenal job of delegating. I work for Brad Brownell, who is everything you just said about Paint is the exact way that Brownell is too. Wake up in the morning, watch hoop. Go to work, watch hoop. Go home, watch NBA hoop. And it's constantly changing. And Paint obviously has been able to recruit at a little bit higher level at Purdue because it's Purdue. But I'm with you. I don't think Cal's like that. I think he's more of the CEO role. He oversees a lot of things, and he is a master craftsman in getting his program out in front of the public. He was that at UMass. He was that at Memphis. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he kind of fired up John Chaney just so UMass could have gotten some more notoriety. He's that kind of guy, and that's fun. That's great. It works. And if you're able to get the best players every year and you're able to overwhelm still works in college. Overwhelm doesn't work in the NBA unless you have Shaq or Joel Embiid, and there's not many of those guys. In college, you can do that with bigger guards and bigger wings, and Oscar Tshiebwe is going to put you back towards that direction.
Well, and that's the thing there, Terrence, is overwhelm can still work in college if you have experience overwhelming.
Absolutely.
You can't simply just do what they did with B.J. Boston coming off screens and Devin Askew trying to make plays. It didn't work. It didn't work last year. I mean, it was underwhelming. It was seriously underwhelming. It was a total failure, that Kentucky season. And I think that Cal is, in being that CEO, okay, he can draw anybody to his restaurant for a visit. That, like, if I had a coach run any business in college basketball, I would pick John Calipari. I don't think there's anyone better in the sport at influencing, at drawing. I mean, you just look at him walk into a room in his jacket with that smile, with that hair. He comes off as the influencer that's going to draw people together, that's going to make something happen. It's about adapting. And he's done it before. He's preached it before. But this isn't as maybe eye-popping or sexy as what was previous. And what I mean by that is when you bring in the kid who's played 2 or 3 years for a Bob Huggins or played for a Bob McKillop, you might not get the same headline. Like Kellen Grady nationally to the casual fan isn't the same as what we think of Kellen Grady. We think Kellen Grady's a great player and was ready to level up. Kellen Grady is not giving Coach Cal maybe the same gratification publicly that the 5-star kid's giving him, but he knows he has to pick up those types of kids if he's going to win in March and April. Because although people don't want to hear it, the fact is I would rather have the kid with 3 stars next to his name that developed into a real talent as a senior than I would having an unproven 5-star. That's the school I'm in. It's the school that the sport has been going in. And the ratings in late March haven't changed. If you look at the television ratings, there's March Madness, it recruits itself. It brings in its own viewers. The way that you win in March Madness, if you're going to overwhelm, you have to have some experience to do it, because coaches have adapted to the one and done movement and said, here's how we are going to beat you. And that's why a Matt Painter is a good example of that, Rob, because he's had to coach maybe a little bit harder. He's had to do a little bit more. But it's a sign of, hey, this can win. This does win. And how does Coach Cal adjust to that now? I think he's doing it. I don't think it's as sexy when in terms of landing on the ESPN bottom line. But if we're talking about winning in March, which is what it comes down to, it's going to mean more.